Today, I have stood where once Jefferson Davis stood and took an oath to my people. It is very appropriate that from this cradle of the Confederacy, this very heart of the great Anglo-Saxon Southland, that today we sound the drum for freedom, as have our generation of forebears before us done time and again down through history. Let us rise to the call of freedom-loving blood that is in us and send our answer to the tyranny that clanks its chains upon the South. In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. Let us send this message back to Washington by our representatives who are here with us today, that from this day we are standing up, and the heel of tyranny does not fit the neck of an upright man, that we intend to take the offensive and carry our fight for freedom across this nation, wielding the balance of power we know we possess in the Southland, that we, not the insipid block voters of some sections, will determine in the next election who shall sit in the White House of these United States.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. So, down in Alabama, a young 17-year-old brother by the name of Ulysses Wilkerson was beaten up badly by the police. So, let's go back and see what led to this underage young brother to get beat up by the police.
A young man severely beaten, and his parents say tonight the police are to blame. Good evening, and thanks for joining us for News 18 at 6 o'clock. We begin tonight in Troy. Viral images of a young man with a bloodied and swollen face originated there, and his mom says it was Troy police that are responsible. News 18's Casey Watson working to find out the full story from both sides tonight. We must warn you that some of the images you're about to see are extremely graphic.
The image you are seeing is viral. It was posted by his mother and has since been shared over 61,000 times. Ulysses Wilkerson's family was searching for answers as to how the 17-year-old ended up like this after an encounter with the Troy police.
He had trauma to the brain, swelling on the brain, and a cracked eye socket in 3 different places.
Many of the 61,000 shares of the Facebook post said they were outraged.
From all over the world, people comment. They want justice.
It is said that officers saw Wilkerson coming out from behind a building in downtown Troy. They said they got out to question him, where he fled, leading to a foot chase that ended here on Madison Street. One witness said she saw officers surrounding Wilkerson, who appeared to be unconscious.
You can see the swelling of his face. You can tell that his face had a lot of bleeding. He looked, like I said, like he was passed out maybe, or in and out of consciousness or something.
Saying the first thing that came to mind was,
I hope they're not beating him, you know.
WDHM reached out to the Troy Police Department and to the Troy Mayor's office. Neither would comment. The family is asking for body and dash camera footage to be released, also telling News 18 that any charges against Wilkerson were dropped and that he was never placed under arrest.
They had him handcuffed when we got in there. They said he was charged with obstruction of justice. The ambulance came to take him to UAB. They took the handcuffs off of him and dropped the charges on him.
Wilkerson was released from UAB but remains under medical attention and could possibly undergo surgery after more swelling goes down. Keeping it local in Troy, Casey Watson, WDHN News 18.
Montgomery television station WSFA reports that police told them the young man reached for his waistband like he was reaching for a weapon. That report also goes on to say the teen was charged with 2 misdemeanors. That's something we can't verify until Troy police agree to speak with us, as things could have changed in the past couple of days since their report. And it also states that a handgun was found near the crime scene. We're working to figure out the details in that case.
So this young brother, Ulysses Wilkerson, was walking down the street with a friend. at about 11 or 12 o'clock at night, when the police say they saw him walking behind a closed business, so they decided to approach him. Now, when they caught up with him, Police Chief Randall Barr says that he was resisting arrest, not complying, he didn't put his hands behind his back. You know, the same story that we heard 1,000 times before. Now, they say he continued to struggle with officers, and he kept reaching for his waistband as if he was trying to pull for some kind of weapon. And of course, the crime of ignoring the police officer's commands. Now, even though there is supposed to be an investigation going on right now, Police Chief Randall Barr said officers had to use physical force to effect the arrest. The force used was reasonable and justified.
This was in Troy, Alabama, and I do want to give you a heads up here because I don't want you to be taken off guard, but the pictures are disturbing. They're hard to look at.
The police say they used reasonable and necessary force after 17-year-old Ulysses Wilkerson resisted arrest and reached for his waistband. Wilkerson's parents say that he was so badly disfigured. Look at his face here. They could barely recognize him. Now they want police to show them the body cam video and the dash cam footage of the arrest. CNN correspondent Diane Gallagher is in Troy, Alabama, with more on this. And I can only imagine what a parent feels when they see their son's face like that.
Victor, I spent yesterday afternoon with Ulysses Wilkerson's mother, and she said that for her, she still is having a hard time thinking about the injuries. He is home from the hospital, but he will face additional surgeries on his eye. He had fractures in his orbital bone there, as well as swelling around his jaw and his head. Again, those pictures are hard to see. His mother says that he's home trying to recover. He's heavily medicated and is spending most of his time sleeping. He doesn't remember much, they say, about the incident that happened just before midnight the day before Christmas Eve. He was downtown in Troy walking. Police say that they tried to stop him and then he ran and they chased him. At that point, they tried to arrest him, get him in custody. He began to reach for his waistband, and that is when it appears those injuries took place. Ulysses says the last thing that he remembers, according to his father, is a tall white officer running and kicking him in the face. Now, the police chief has asked for the State Bureau of Investigations to look into the use of force here, and the mayor says that at least one officer has been put on leave during that investigation. But for Ulysses' mother, this is really difficult for her to kind of comprehend this has happened. Here's what she said yesterday.
As a mother, I was shocked, horrified, and devastated to see my son this way. Convicted of police brutality. While I'm hopeful that the State Bureau of Investigation will uncover the truth, I still call on the community to take a stand. We will not settle until we know the truth behind the brutal beating of my dear son, and until these police officers are held accountable for their crimes.
And now the community is expected to rally and stand up for Ulysses today right outside of this police station, actually at around noon Eastern time. They're expected to come out and demand justice. And Victor, you talked about body cam video. The district attorney says that he has not viewed it yet, but it does exist.
So later, when the police say they retraced the foot chase, they found a handgun somewhere in the area. Now, they don't tell you if they have his fingerprints on the gun. They don't show you any evidence. They don't even show you a picture of the gun. But if he dropped the gun while he was in a foot chase, or he tossed the gun, or whatever he did, why would he keep reaching for his waistband as if he was going to reach for a gun? Why would he keep reaching for something that he doesn't have? Now, according to Ulysses Wilkerson's family, he was already handcuffed when the police were assaulting him. He doesn't remember much, but the last thing he remembers is a big white officer kicking him in the face. He suffered trauma and swelling in the brain and a cracked eye socket in 3 places. Then, after they beat this 17-year-old kid close to death, they then charged him for having to beat him up in the first place.
Tonight, a photo of 17-year-old Ulysses Wilkerson with a bloody and swollen face Well, it went viral after an encounter with Troy police, a story you saw here earlier this week. We had not heard from Troy police at that point when our story aired. Today we can confirm, though, that the charges against Wilkerson were actually not dropped, as we were told by his father. The charges are obstructing governmental operations and resisting arrest, both misdemeanors. The Post has led to a lot of outrage around the country. But today in Dothan, we spoke with Chet on the streets, who offers us some perspective and his opinion on the case.
See that guy's face, and obviously, you know, your first thought is either, oh, he deserved it, he was running, or your first thought is, oh, that cop deserves to be fired, he deserves to be convicted, things like that. And we don't know. I don't believe anyone deserves to be beat like that. The truth is, we really don't know. We know because we don't know what happened.
Troy Police Chief Randall Barr handed the investigation over to the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. The completed investigation will then be turned over to the Pike County District Attorney, Tom Anderson, and then it will go to a grand jury. We're going to keep you posted on this, but let's stay with this storyline tonight. A rally is being held this coming Saturday, December 30th at 11 a.m. in Troy, held by Ulysses Wilkerson's family across from the Troy Police Station. They're protesting for answers and for dash and body camera footage to be released.
Just want everybody to know to come together and help us serve justice for my baby. That's it, you know.
We're going to continue to follow this story as more developments are released.
They had this young brother in the hospital handcuffed to the bed. They charged him with obstruction of governmental operations and resisting arrest. And notice, just like with a lot of these cases, there were no charges for anything he did before the police started harassing him in the first place. They charge you with resisting arrest without even having a reason to arrest you in the first place. And it's unclear if they are charging them or not. I don't even think the family lawyer knows if they're charging them or not. But the police are protecting their own. They aren't even releasing the names of the police officers involved. They even have body camera footage, and they don't have to show it if they don't want to, thanks to Alabama law.
Body cameras are usually seen as a solution to the problem of police brutality. However, a new survey of 75 police departments across the United States found that the policies governing them have failed to foster transparency, protect privacy, or defend civil rights. A yearly report released by Upturn and the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights found numerous key weaknesses this week in body cam policies across the country. 51% of the surveyed police departments made no changes to their body cam policies since last year.
So even though they have video of what happened, we just have to leave it up to the Alabama State Bureau of Investigations to solve the case for us. Now the problem is, there are so many cases like this, we could never talk about all of them. We'll be here forever. And then something else happens to someone else before we could talk about the last person. They do this to our children with immunity because we can't punish them for doing anything to our children. We all can agree that we don't want things like this happening to our children or to anybody in our families. We don't want it to happen to ourselves. I think we generally agree with the issues that we have in the black community. The problem is, it's easier for us to fight with each other, to blame each other, to point the finger at each other, than to actually focus on the solutions and actually do what it's going to take to stop this kind of stuff from happening. We can agree that the economy is a huge problem in the black community. And we give a lot of money away for nothing, for free. Right now, we could easily set up a group with the most successful black business people and make sure they stay transparent, make sure they tell you what they're going to do, and make sure they follow through with whatever they tell you. But we could easily set up this group and all contribute to it. Rich, poor, it doesn't matter. You can contribute $1, $100, $1,000, whatever you have. That would easily help the growth of black businesses in America. But in a state like Alabama, a place that just celebrated black women and black people for the vote, for not getting Roy Moore elected, instead of focusing on ourselves, we are still worried about going to vote for somebody who is less racist than somebody else. And we waste time debating amongst ourselves on whether we should vote or not, or whether we should vote Democrat or Republican or not. But voting doesn't mean anything if you don't have your own candidate running for office. Now, the difference with them is Republican or Democrat, they still find a way to justify a cop's murder, or at least find a way not to punish them for whatever crimes they do. Now, if the safety and protection of our children isn't enough for us to do what we got to do, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, tonight in Pike County, a public outcry for answers continues in Troy. The Troy Police Department and the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation have yet to release video of the December 23rd arrest that landed a 17-year-old in the hospital despite an ultimatum from a family representative. Tonight, a large group came out to the city council meeting demanding the truth. WSFA 12 News reporter Rosanna Smith has the latest.
There was standing room only at Troy's City Council meeting as Karen Jones, member of Saving Ourselves, took to the podium.
I don't care what color you are. If you don't feel this pain, something is seriously wrong with you.
Showing a picture of 17-year-old Ulysses Wilkerson, who was injured during an encounter with Troy police in December, Jones' message was simple.
It has to be truth and justice or else. We must correct incorrect behavior.
Jones, like others in this community, continue to push for the video from the night of the incident to be released. Mayor Reeves responded only by reading a statement asking for everyone to be patient as the State Bureau of Investigation completes their work.
Due to my respect for SBI and my commitment to a full and fair investigative process, I cannot discuss the details of this investigation.
The Pike County chapter of the NAACP is in the process of forming a committee to execute a comprehensive review of the Troy Police Department. Dana Bascom, president of this chapter, says in order to make sure what happened to Wilkerson doesn't happen again, this community has to come together.
We need to ensure we are united in our effort and we're all speaking with one voice.
After the council meeting, a town hall meeting was held here at St. Peter Missionary Baptist Church. But organizers say this is yet another way to mobilize as they wait for answers.
You on camera? You on camera, girl? You on camera, girl? You on camera, girl? You shot me. Hey, you on camera, girl? I got you. I got you, girl. You shot me. I got you. You shot me. You shot me for that, girl. Fuck the police. Hey, you good, girl? Bro, you already shot me, bro. Y'all see this shit, bro? I got you. You got me, bro. I got you. So on the ground. I'm waiting on the lieutenant. Okay, they're on the way. I'm waiting on lieutenant. On the ground. Bro, I ain't getting on no ground, bro. On the ground, look. Man, I ain't getting on no ground, bro. On the ground. Man, don't put your hand on me, bro. I ain't put my hand on you. On the ground. What you got my shirt for? On the ground. What you got my shirt for, bro? On the ground. What you got my shirt for? On the ground. Bro, what you got my shirt like that for, bro? Let my shirt go, bro. I'm finna grab your shirt. On the ground. I ain't disrespecting. Hey, man. Calm down, man. Hey, man. On the fucking ground. Yeah. Run, man. He hit him in the face. You on camera now, putting that man in the face. Yeah, they put me in the face. I got you. I got you. They did want. Hey, brother. Hey, what up? Damn, sound like that's fucked up.
Now to that exclusive video of police hitting and kicking a burglary suspect. For more than 9 months now, we have been following the story of Chad Holly, the teenager who said he was beaten by police during his arrest.
4 officers have been charged with crimes for the incident, and tonight, for the first time, we are getting to see the video. 13 Undercover's Wayne Dolcefino is here with that video. Wayne?
Yeah, Gina and Dave, tonight every single patrol cop in this city has been told the video is out there. The mayor wouldn't let you see it, nor the district attorney or the police chief. We've all been told it's too graphic, disturbing for the public. And we remind you that it is, as we show you the video that so many Houstonians have wanted to see. It was an afternoon in March. A security camera captures the end of a Houston police pursuit. Burglar Chad Holly was trying to make a run for it. He's clipped by a police car. On the ground, he clearly puts his arms out in the surrender pose, then folds his arms behind his head before police move in. But look what happens next. The first officer stomps on his head. He's repeatedly kicked. We count 4 officers doing the kicking. Then one officer lands 5 separate kicks. It looks like the kicks are landing on Holly's head. You'll see more kicks. Holly has been on the ground, cops on top of him, all around him, for about 20 seconds. And then another police officer lands 5 heavy punches. The officer who did the kicking in the beginning does it again, this time from behind. Then he stomps on the back of Holly's legs. Then just before Holly is picked up to be taken to a patrol car, there's another lick.
The first showing of the video will be in a courtroom, sir.
But now we're making the video public, months after the DA, the police chief, and the mayor refused to let you see it.
I got the tape legally, so sit back and watch your television tonight like everybody else in this city, because we're all going to see what's going on.
Community activist Quanell X had been sued by one of the cops in the Holly case. A judge gave him the right to get the tape, and he gave it to us. Just minutes after we made our copy, the federal judge who had blocked release of this video was on the phone trying to stop its release. It was too late.
Absolutely, it's a powerful tape, and it's a shameful tape because you see police officers out there at the scene behaving themselves like criminals, not law enforcement officers who respect and honor their duty to the badge. And I'm telling you, when the people in the hood see it, they're going to be angry also, and now it's time that it come out.
4 Houston police officers were indicted for what you've just seen on video, but on misdemeanor charges of official oppression, not assault.
I want to know how in the hell did they do what they did to that boy on that videotape, and they only got charged with official oppression.
12 officers were punished in the wake of the Holly case. Many of them have been given their jobs back against the city's will. And you can see the whole video again on our website at abc13.com. And the 4 officers who were indicted have all pled not guilty. Wayne Dolcefino, 13 Undercover.
Houston police officials are not saying much about the release of this video. Police Chief Charles McClellan gave us this statement, and we quote, "I have already taken disciplinary action and will have no further comment until the last case is adjudicated and or appealed."
Late this evening, Mayor Anise Parker released this statement, quote, "I was shocked and disgusted when I first viewed this tape. My feelings haven't changed. This is not acceptable in Houston. The city of Houston has fully supported the district attorney's desire to keep this video from being released prior to trial because we did not want to do anything that could jeopardize the prosecution of the police officers involved. We vigorously sought termination of the officers and continue to fight to keep them from ever again working at the Houston Police Department. Whoever provided the video to Channel 13 is in violation of a federal court order and should be prosecuted. It is unfortunate and irresponsible that Channel 13 has chosen to air the material at this time," end quote.
All right, you heard it here first on 10 News. A San Diego police sergeant suing over a racist cartoon shown during a training session.
Team 10 broke the story at midday, and now the NAACP is responding. Investigator Melissa Masiha is joining us now, and this cartoon was shown in a training session, we're told, to higher-ups.
Yeah, and it was shown in multiple classes for sergeants and lieutenants. Now, the sergeant says he tried to speak out against the cartoon but was transferred to a different division as a result. A warning, the cartoon is offensive.
Treating other people as how you want to be treated, you know.
This is Sergeant Arthur Scott during an interview with 10 News last year. Now the 10-year veteran of the San Diego Police Department is suing over this. In the lawsuit, Scott said this cartoon from the early 1900s was used to reference Officer Frank McCarter, the first black San Diego police officer, during a training session August of last year. The cartoon shows McCarter as a monkey. The NAACP said the racist image should be shown in this story so people could see what happened in the training class. The cartoon also shows derogatory comments geared toward Asians.
The cartoon is racist.
Dr. Andre Branch of the NAACP reviewed the cartoon.
To indicate in a training examples of racism, it would be appropriate. But it would not be appropriate to simply illustrate another African-American human being.
It wasn't about, hey, you know, here's an example of despicable racism from the past. It wasn't about, hey, I want to talk about race relations and how we can't do this sort of thing.
Attorney Dan Gillian represents the sergeant. The lawsuit says when Scott complained about it, he was transferred out of the Southeastern Division, something he did not want. Scott has spoken out before. The lawsuit said in 2011 he complained about racist images of President Barack Obama in some officers' lockers. A lieutenant said he was being hypersensitive.
Obviously, the chiefs here don't particularly appreciate someone's right to speak out against racism.
It's not the first time the department was accused of racism. Last year, sources said officers complained because there were, quote, too many black faces on a mural inside San Diego's Southeastern Division station. At that time, 3 officers talked to Team 10 anonymously for fear of retaliation. And just in the last 40 minutes, we got a response from Chief Shelley Zimmerman. She said they were made aware of this pending lawsuit this afternoon and that they take the allegations very seriously. They will fully cooperate and support any and all investigations. We've also reached out to local Asian American groups. We'll have their comments tonight at 7.
Live from the State Capitol building in Montgomery, Alabama, Face the Nation, a spontaneous and unrehearsed news interview in the office of George C. Wallace, Governor of Alabama.
I hope that you can see here this about the New York. And President Johnson said American citizens have a right to protection of life and limb, whether driving along a highway in Georgia, a road in Mississippi, or a street in New York. Look at the clubs raised by the policemen hitting demonstrators in New York. I want to show you a picture here from the Philadelphia route. Look at the clubs there, and look at people on the ground being beaten. Can you see that? I hope that you will just look at that.
Governor, I'd like to pursue that point with you just a moment if I could.
I'm going to show this, though, because we've had a lot of distortion in this country. Look at the drawn pistols here in New York, where they're shooting over the heads of the demonstrators. Suppose there'd been any shots over the demonstrators the other day. They're talking about using horses, and I'm against violence, and I'm just as sorry that anybody got hurt. They talk about Cossacks. Look at all these Cossacks here, so-called. Look at these horsemen running down people in the city of New York. There they are. That's not Selma, Alabama. That's New York. And I have other pictures here, and I challenge this network themselves to run the film of the stopping of demonstrations in every city in this United States and let the American people judge for themselves.
Governor, you referred to Philadelphia and to New York as riots. You think that the situation that existed on this side of the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Sunday was a riot? The Negroes were standing in a line waiting and asking to have a word with your troopers, sir.
Mr. Benton, and I want to say again that my orders have always been to use a minimum amount of force. No force if necessary. For goodness sakes, don't let anybody get hurt. I've said that over and over and over. That's all.
Was the amount of force used last Sunday the minimum required?
Was it the minimum required? That matter at the present time, as a result of the charges of police brutality, is under investigation, but I'm not going to be stampeded or blackjacked, as Mr. Johnson said, into making any accusations against the police because some outside agitators themselves have accused us of police brutality. Because clubs were used on Pennsylvania Avenue the other day in clearing the street of people who lay down for 30 minutes. Now, when you say was the settlement situation the same, I want to again say that we don't want anybody to get hurt, and I'm just as remorseful about injuries to any American citizen as anyone.
All right, and we back on the forecast. So recently, Judge Sessions decided to close the case of Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. He was a 68-year-old brother with heart conditions who was shot and killed by police in his own home in White Plains, New York, around the time that Trayvon Martin got murdered. Now let's see what could justify the murder of a senior citizen brother in his own home by the police.
Breaking news tonight, federal prosecutors say that they're going to launch a criminal investigation of the white police officer who shot and killed this man, Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., an African-American retired Marine, inside his own home last November. The federal investigation comes on the heels of a grand jury's decision not to indict the officer. The grand jury's ruling yesterday left many people shaking their heads and many others, including Chamberlain's family, demanding answers. What they want to know is why police officers in White Plains, New York, who were dispatched in the early hours of a November morning to help Mr. Chamberlain, ended up killing him. Just after 5 a.m., Vietnam vet Kenneth Chamberlain, a 68-year-old African-American man with a severe heart condition, sets off his medical alert device.
Mr. Chamberlain, this is your help center for Life Aid. Do you need an ambulance, sir?
The operator attempts to talk to him on a two-way speaker in his home.
Mr. Chamberlain, I'm not getting a response. I'm going to notify someone to come by and help you now.
Emergency personnel are dispatched to his apartment to check on him. By 5:30, White Plains police officers are the first to arrive. Chamberlain is now alert and sounds agitated.
I have the White Plains Police Department banging on my door, and I did not call them, and I am not sick.
Everything's all right, sir?
No, it's not all right. I need help. The White Plains Police Department are banging on my door.
Over the next 40 minutes, officers repeatedly try to get him to open the door.
I'm okay. I need to see that you're okay. Now we'll go. No, you leave. Can't leave. You leave. You called us. I can't leave.
Others arrive, including medical personnel and Chamberlain's niece, who also lives in the building.
I don't even think they cared about me because they didn't even acknowledge me.
At 6:13, police turn on a taser, which records this video.
Mr. Chamberlain, leave. I can't leave. We got to check you out. Leave and put the knife down. Put the knife down.
Police say he had a butcher's knife in his hand that he stuck through a crack in the door.
Put the knife down and step away from the door. Now I'm not asking you, I'm telling you.
Another officer is now standing outside a window in Chamberlain's first-floor apartment. The district attorney has confirmed that in a section of the tape not given to CNN, an officer calls Mr. Chamberlain the N-word. Meanwhile, police inside the building are using bolt cutters to get into Chamberlain's apartment. They believe he's used a chair to block the door. At 6:41, more than an hour after they arrived, police finally get Chamberlain's door open. They say he's waving a butcher's knife above his head, and they tase him. Seconds later, they tase him again. At this point, police turn off the taser camera. This is the last image we have of Kenneth Chamberlain alive. Police say he continued to come at them with a knife, so they shot him with several beanbags from a shotgun. Police say when that didn't stop him, one officer had fired his pistol twice. One bullet hit Chamberlain in the lung, killing him. At 7:09 a.m., just about 2 hours after a medical alert dispatcher calls to see if the former Marine is okay, Kenneth Chamberlain is pronounced dead.
So this elder, Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., who is also a vet who served in Vietnam, because we know how much America loves its veterans, was in his own home sleeping when he accidentally pressed the life alert. So when the operator tried to talk to him and he didn't respond, she called for the paramedics. Then at about 5 o'clock in the morning, that's when White Plains police officers, including Anthony Carelli and Steven Hart, showed up. Now this brother told the police at least 60 times that he was okay, he wanted them to leave, and that everything is alright. Even the life aid operator tried to call and cancel. But the police insisted and tried for over an hour to get into his apartment. They were screaming at him to open the door, and when he said, "I'm just a sick old man," Officer Steven Hart replied, "We don't give a fuck, nigger." Now, after an hour of this, the police finally kicked the door down, knocked it off the hinges, and they claim he had a knife, so they tased him 2 times, then shot him 4 times with a beanbag gun, beat him with a baton. And after all that, Officer Anthony Carelli said this 68-year-old superhuman was still attacking him with a knife, so he was forced to shoot him 2 times in the chest. Now, mind you, the police were on a call from Life Alert, and it ends up with them shooting a 68-year-old man dead. And while they were supposed to be investigating the case, they were already justifying it.
They had come to treat for a medical emergency.
Investigative reporter Jim Hoffer is here now with the new details on the story he broke last night at 11. Jim.
Bill and Liz, the family is stepping up pressure tonight on the district attorney in Westchester County, saying video and audio the DA has obtained show police should be indicted for the fatal shooting of their father. Family and friends stood outside the offices of the Westchester County District Attorney's Office this afternoon, demanding a thorough, unbiased grand jury investigation of the fatal shooting by police of Kenneth Chamberlain.
We're giving Ms. DeFiore's office an opportunity to do the right thing by this family. But I assure you, if it is not done, if there is not an indictment, then we will proceed to the U.S. Attorney's Office to demand a civil rights investigation of this city.
3 months ago, White Plains police responded to a medical alert call that the 68-year-old had accidentally pressed while sleeping. Upon arriving, police claimed they heard an emotionally disturbed Chamberlain screaming inside the apartment, and at one point, they say, he pulled out a knife. Here's how police back then described what happened next.
The officers first used an electronic taser, which was discharged, hit the victim, and had no effect. While the officers were retreating, the officers then used a shotgun, a beanbag shotgun.
Seconds later, police shot and killed Chamberlain. A warranted use of deadly force, they insist. But as we reported last night, audio and video are raising serious questions about the police version of events, according to the family and their attorneys, who recently were allowed to listen and view it.
Did I see anything in the video that would warrant their action? Not at all. My father, when the door was busted down, he was about 8 to 10 feet away from him with his hands down to his side. That's not an aggressive act.
If you are in your home and you are sleeping at 5 o'clock in the morning and law enforcement comes on a medical call, you should not have your door broken down and you should not end up dead.
The district attorney's office says in the coming weeks, the video and audio tapes, along with all other evidence, will be presented to a Westchester County grand jury. The son, who has already seen some of that evidence, swears it is proof police used excessive force.
I'm asking that these police officers be brought up on criminal charges.
Police have declined to answer any of our questions about the shooting while it is under investigation. We also requested a copy of the initial incident report through Freedom of Information. Police have also denied that request.
The family is asking for a fair and unbiased investigation. Meanwhile, the police are doing everything they can to protect their own. For 5 months, they did everything they can to protect the name of those police officers until somebody finally leaked the name to the media. Even then, they tried to do everything they could to stop it. And when we finally get their names, we find out they have a history of violence and racism.
The beleaguered White Plains Police Department has been given another black eye today as it's revealed the officer who used a racial slur on the morning Kenneth Chamberlain was killed has never been disciplined.
He's tapping on the window and you hear him say, Mr. Chamberlain, stop. We have to talk. And I mean, it's as clear as a bell. that the N-word came right out of this officer's mouth.
It's a travesty. Commissioner Chong should be held accountable because he should have disciplined him immediately when they found out who the officer that called Mr. Chamberlain the N-word.
The offensive language came from White Plains police officer Steven Hart, according to the district attorney's transcripts. And he's also facing a federal civil rights lawsuit for unlawfully arresting this man, slamming his head to the ground, breaking his nose, and injuring his arm. The Chamberlain's family attorney says it shows a culture of tolerance for racism and brutality in White Plains.
It's really troubling that in 2012, the city of White Plains apparently sees fit to hire and retain officers who are alleged to brutalize, falsely arrest suspects, and kill them without cause, and use racial slurs.
The mayor has not stepped in and called the management accountable for the action of their officers and the action of management.
While a grand jury is still considering murder charges in Chamberlain's death against Officer Anthony Carelli, who fired the two fatal shots, and Officer Hart, others from their unit are being called to testify as well. When asked about policies prohibiting the use of slurs or punishment by the White Plains PD, they would only say they cooperated fully with the Westchester County District Attorney's investigation. Now, the police department refused to answer our questions, including, is there a policy against using racial slurs? What is the punishment? And is Hart still patrolling the neighborhood where so many heard him use this language before Chamberlain was fatally shot?
These two cops beat up two brothers, called them raghead, and they were already facing a $10 million lawsuit. Now, despite all of this evidence, the police department, the police union, they all continue to back these police officers. Even though this brother's hands was at his side, even when the autopsy showed he wasn't even facing the officers, even when the coroner said he couldn't have been holding a knife, they still stuck by the police officer's story. They continued to stand up for all of these police officers. Now, Officer Anthony Carelli didn't go to trial because a grand jury refused to indict him. Then a federal jury rejected a civil suit against Officer Anthony Carelli and the city of White Plains after the judge refused to allow evidence of racial slurs or Carelli's past.
For months, the family of Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. was asking the police department in White Plains to release the name of the officer who fatally shot and killed the man inside his White Plains apartment here. And the police department blocked them at every turn. Today, it was leaked to the media, along with the devastating news that he is also facing trial for assaulting a man and using racial epithets years ago, leaving the family to wonder, could his death have been prevented?
I want to cry at 1 minute, but then I'm angry because I'm saying these are people who are supposed to be coming to assist him and help him, but instead they ended up killing him.
Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. reacts to the news that Anthony Carelli is the officer who shot and killed his unarmed father in his home. And he's also headed to trial for excessive force in arresting two brothers and using racial epithets.
He should have been on a modified duty based upon this federal lawsuit, which includes brutality.
Chamberlain's attorneys had demanded White Plains police identify Carelli after he killed the 68-year-old Marine last November, but they were denied for more than 4 months.
That's something that they should have done on their own. Unfortunately, it came as a result of great investigative work from the media.
It was leaked to the media, and White Plains PD confirmed the shooter is 29-year-old Officer Anthony Carelli, who lives here in Harrison with his parents. Carelli is also one of 10 defendants named in a civil rights lawsuit for arresting and beating the Hattar brothers, 27-year-old twins. This is a picture of Jerry after he was brutalized. The suit alleges Carelli kicked, struck, and beat them while they were handcuffed and used racial epithets, calling them ragheads.
Officer Carelli used excessive force and, beat upon my clients and violated his civil rights.
This comes as the Westchester DA is preparing to bring charges before a grand jury for Carelli's role in shooting and killing Chamberlain Sr. after audio and videotapes of the killing were reviewed.
You hear the expletive saying, "I don't give a F," then use the N-word and tell them to open the door.
I see them opening a door, and I see Mr. Chamberlain, a 68-year-old man with a heart condition, standing in his house with his arms at his side, no shirt on, and boxer shorts on.
An officer can be heard saying, "Turn it off." And that's when Carelli fired the two fatal shots at Kenneth Chamberlain, ending his life. Officer Carelli faces numerous trials, coming up first in front of a grand jury to see whether or not he'll be indicted on any murder charges in the death of Chamberlain. Then later in the month, he goes on federal trial for violating civil rights.
And now, U.S. Attorney Joon Kim has announced no civil rights charges will be filed either. He said that Officer Carelli believed that Sergeant Martin was in danger of being seriously injured by Mr. Chamberlain. The investigation revealed no evidence to refute Officer Carelli's testimony that he shot Mr. Chamberlain in response to his belief that Sergeant Martin was in danger of being seriously physically injured by Mr. Chamberlain, and that shooting this elder in his own home while on a life alert call was completely justified. To tase him, beat him with a baton, shoot him with a beanbag gun wasn't enough. You had to shoot him in the chest in order to stop this old man who had a knife that the coroner said is no way he could have had it. None of this is no surprise. It doesn't matter if you're a senior citizen. It doesn't matter if you're a man. It doesn't matter if you're a woman. It doesn't matter if you're rich. It doesn't matter if you're poor. They will still justify it. This man was a vet who fought in Vietnam. But I don't see the support our troops crowd standing up for this man. At the end of the day, unless you have an army that could back up what you say and that can enforce punishment for murdering one of our people, then we're going to be stuck in the same position. Asking and begging these people for fairness and for justice is falling on deaf ears. We are all we got, and we are the only ones that can change it.
I tell people, good, bad, or indifferent. My father loved me, I loved him. I did plenty of things that he didn't agree with, that he would really get on me about. But one thing that I can always say is that no matter what I went through, my father supported me, he encouraged me, he let me find my way.
This is your help center for Life Aid. Kenneth, do you need help? Mr. Chamberlain, you pressed your medical button. Do you need help? Mr. Chamberlain, I'm not getting a response. I'm going to notify someone to come by and help you now.
White Plains Police Officer Cianci.
Good morning. This is Life Aid reporting a medical alert.
Medical alert?
Yes. This is your help center for Life Aid. Mr. Chamberlain, do you need help?
Yes, this is an emergency. I have the White Plains Police Department banging on my door, and I did not call them, and I am not sick.
Sir, I'm attempting to cancel a dispatch for Kenneth Chamberlain at 135 South Lexington.
They're gonna make entry anyway.
I am not opening the door for them.
They just want to make sure you're okay.
They're trying to hurt me to murder me.
They're not going to hurt you, sir.
I know I'm going to get hurt. I know that. I know I'm going to get hurt. You're not here to help hurt me. You're going to kill me, huh? You're going to beat my motherfucking ass. I'm a 68-year-old man with heart trouble, and you're going to beat me. Oh, you got your gun ready. Oh, they got your shotgun, y'all. They can fight that on too, huh? They have stun guns and shotguns at the ready. They have their locked out. They're planning on taking me to the White Plains Police Department and beat me and then kill me. I want you to got me. If you got to go alone, leave it alone. Open up. Leave it alone. Open up. Leave my house. Leave my home. Don't do that, sir. Don't do that. Don't do that, officer. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do not do that. I'm telling you I'm okay. We're taking the hinges off the door. We're getting ready to break through. I hear you. They're breaking through. They're breaking through, Mr. President. They're breaking through. I'm outnumbered and I can't hold you. They're taking the hinges off. They're breaking the door. They're getting ready to come in. They're getting ready to come in.
Pickens Police Chief Tommy Ellenberg handed in his gun and badge tonight, tendering his resignation after city officials say he used the N-word on 2 separate occasions.
Tonight we hear from both sides, those who support the chief and those who demanded his dismissal. News 4's Mandy Gaither is live and local on the story from our Anderson newsroom. And Mandy, the chief, well, his resignation is effective immediately, right?
Well, that's right, Michael, and I tried to get in touch with Tommy Ellenberg, but no one answered his door. Neighbors said it just wasn't a good time to try to talk to him. He looked very upset as he walked out of council chambers during their closed executive session, and minutes later we learned Ellenberg is no longer chief.
The yeses have it, and we have accepted Chief Ellenberg's resignation.
With a 3-2 vote, Pickens City Council accepted Chief Tommy Ellenberg's resignation, effective immediately.
It's a sad time in Pickens right now. No one wins in this. I just think for the police force to be effective and continue serving the people, that it was best that Mr. Ellenberg resign.
Councilman Fletcher Perry, along with Patrick Lark and Carlton Hawley, voted to accept the resignation, while Councilman Tommy Stevens and Mayor David Owens voted against it.
And I hate something like this is bringing a good man down.
Y'all stop. That's enough. That's enough. Y'all going to get out if y'all want to keep it up.
Tension was felt in the Pickens City Hall lobby as supporters of Ellenberg and those who wanted his resignation had words with one another.
We didn't call the National Guard. They called the NAACP.
Well, sir, that's all right. Let's just...
It was the Pickens County NAACP president, Sheila Crawford, who asked for the special called meeting with council and asked for Ellenberg's dismissal.
The N-word should not be in the mindset of the police chief. For what is in the heart will come out.
But there was plenty of support for Ellenberg as well. Some painted their cars while others posted signs hoping Ellenberg would keep his job. In fact, City Administrator Catherine Brackett says her police force may soon be smaller.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if a few officers resign by tomorrow morning. He has an immense amount of support, contrary to what former ex-officers have said here. His department is hurt. You know, and I think we might have some more resignations tomorrow.
Assistant Chief Rodney Gregory will now be acting chief. As for Ellenberg, council voted to continue paying his insurance for 8 months at a cost of about $400 a month, and he'll be paid his general leave balance for his vacation and sick time, which is about $13,000, according to the administrator.
An elected official refusing to step down after making a racist remark. His name is Robert Copeland, and he's a member of the Police Commission in Wolfboro, New Hampshire.
Recently, a resident overheard him using a racist term to describe President Obama, and as New Hampshire Bureau Chief Michael Rosenfield shows us tonight, Copeland admits he said it.
Wolfboro residents packed a police commissioners meeting on Thursday, many demanding the resignation of Robert Copeland, one of the 3 elected members of the Police Commission.
I find that Commissioner Copeland's comments in public appalling for a public official.
The controversy stems from an encounter here at Nolan's Bistro in downtown Wolfboro. Town resident Jane O'Toole says she was wrapping up a meal when she overheard Copeland use the N-word about President Obama.
I brushed by him. I couldn't hold myself back, and I said, "Is someone here tossing around the N-word?" And he rose up, turned around, and said, "Yeah." So I just said, "Not good, not good," and walked out of the restaurant.
O'Toole wrote a letter to the local paper and then received an email from Copeland which said, in part, "I believe I did use the N-word in reference to the current occupant of the White House. For this, I do not apologize. He meets and exceeds my criteria for such." Whitney White is one of the town's few minority residents.
And if you feel that way, great. I'm all about freedom of speech, but then don't represent the public that way.
Police Chief Stuart Chase says the commission is responsible for hiring and firing department employees, and while he calls the comments unacceptable, he says Copeland has done a lot of good for the community.
He has donated time, energy, resources to this town in a multitude of capacities that no one will ever know about.
Copeland was just re-elected to a 3-year term in March.
So what's your business with me right now?
I want to find out who you are and what the problem was back
There
in the
is no
National
problem.
Bank.
That's the thing.
So talk to me, let me know
And
who
let you
are,
know.
and you can be on your way.
Why do I have to let you know who I am? Who I am isn't
because
the problem.
that's what police do when they get called.
Well, I don't have to let you.
identify people.
Well, I know my rights, first off. Secondly, I don't have to let you know who I am if I haven't broken any laws. Like I told him, I'm going to New Horizons to pick up my kids at 10 o'clock. I was sitting there for 10 minutes. Fully. Like not before he walked up to me or anything. He walked up to me a minute after and got irate with me. So first off, that's a public area. And if there's no sign that doesn't say this is a private area, you can't sit here, no one can tell me I can't sit there. If that's the case, then I can't sit here. The problem is I'm black. That's the problem. No, it really is, because I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not sitting there with a group of people. I'm sitting there by myself. By myself. Not causing a problem with anyone. There isn't a sign that says this is a private area, you can't sit here. Therefore, you cannot tell me I can't sit there if I'm not doing anything wrong. What's going on, brother?
What's going on?
I gotta go get my kids. No. Please don't touch me. Please don't touch me.
You're gonna go to jail then.
No, wait.
You're gonna go to jail.
I'm not doing anything wrong.
Hold on.
Can you please?
I'm not
No, come on, brother.
Hold on, I'm not here to argue. I'm not your brother.
This is assault. Can you please?
Hold on. I'm not here to argue with you.
Wrong, sir.
Put your hands behind your back.
No, can you please
Put
not
your hands
do
behind
this?
your back.
I didn't do anything wrong.
Put your hands behind your back.
Come on, really? I gotta go get my kids
Put
at
your
10.
hands behind your back, otherwise it's gonna get ugly.
What do you need from me?
I told you.
Can you have him let me go?
And identify you so you can settle what happened.
I haven't done
I've
anything
told
wrong.
you. I told you what I wanted initially. So we could settle all
Put your hands
this.
behind your back.
I started to.
Right now, I haven't done anything wrong. Please, no, don't do this. Please,
Put your hands behind your back.
Go the program.
Put your hands behind your back. Turn around.
Can somebody help me? That's my kids right there. My kids are right there.
Yeah, put your hands behind your back.
Put your hands behind your back. Don't choke me. I have asthma, sir.
Well, you're gonna get
doing
tased.
anything. I'm not doing anything.
You're gonna get tased.
I'm doing. Ow! Get down! I'm not doing anything. Stop, please. Someone help me. Someone please help me. Please help me. Please help me. Can someone please help me? I haven't done anything wrong. Can someone please help me? Really?
help you.
I haven't done anything wrong.
Just shut down for a little bit.
President Trump this day is issuing an executive order that will make it easier to protect yourselves and your communities. He is rescinding restrictions from the prior administration that limited your agency's ability to get equipment through federal programs, including life-saving gear. Equipment like helicopters, armed vehicles are vitally important to emergency and disaster response efforts. One sheriff told me earlier this year about how, due to prior administration restrictions, the federal government made his department return an armored vehicle that can change the dynamics in an active shooter situation. These are the types of helmets and gear that stopped a bullet and saved the life of an officer during the Orlando nightclub shooting. This is the type of equipment officers needed when they pursued and ultimately killed terrorists in San Bernardino. Studies have shown that this equipment reduces crime rates, reduces the number of assaults against police officers, and actually reduces the number of complaints against police officers. These restrictions that had been opposed went too far. We will not put superficial concerns above public safety. We will do our best to get you what you need. The executive order that the President will sign today will ensure that you can get the life-saving gear you need to do your job and send a strong message that we will not allow criminal activity, violence, and lawlessness to become a new normal. And we will save taxpayer money in the process. There's not a dollar to waste, and we're not going to waste dollar. We're not going to allow equipment no longer needed to be sitting idle when you could be using it.
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RIP to the elder Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., who was shot down in his own home by White Plains police. And I'm glad the brother Ulysses Wilkerson is alive, even though the young brother was badly injured by police in Alabama. At the end of the day, whatever differences we have isn't that major to allow these kind of things to happen, to allow our children to be beaten or murdered by the police, to allow our elderly to be beaten or murdered by the police, or any of us to be murdered by the police. There are key things that we all agree on, and we can focus on those key things. We can focus on group economics and building our own economy, which would create more jobs for us. Then we would be able to open our own schools and be able to have our own curriculums. We need to focus on having our own candidates, especially in the local areas, the places that your local tax dollars go directly, that choose whether the schools is going to get funded or the jail is going to get built in your city, that hire the police chief in your area, the people who set the policies for the police, even to be in control of your local streets being fixed or making sure that your local water supply isn't poisoned. There are plenty of things that we agree on. We're just so busy focusing on the things that we disagree about, arguing over whatever belief system that we have. But if we can't create an army that can protect us, we're going to continue to be subject to their laws, their punishment, and we'll continue to be under their jurisdiction. Nobody is going to respect what you have to say if you don't have an army backing it up. So, as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.